Hello, everyone. My name is Mark Piesman, and I'm the Vice President of Strategic Partnerships at Productiv. And I would like to welcome you all to Productiv's first ever joint partnership webinar with our friends from Varisource. And this is also part of Varisource's Supplier Showcase series. Productiv is an enterprise SaaS intelligence platform that helps large enterprises unlock the power of application usage data to drive productivity at work. We do that through proactive governance, operational velocity, and employee engagement. And Varisource is a B2B technology data marketplace that aggregates tens of millions of data points of vendor intelligence to help inform IT sourcing decisions. The topic of today's webinar discussion is data insight for business outcomes. 5 business outcomes that IT teams can deliver with increased visibility and automation within their technology portfolios. Or as our friend Victor would say, welcome to the Dataverse. Which, Victor, by the way, if you haven't service marked that term, you ought to and buy the domain. Let me first go over the format for today's presentation. Once my short introduction is over, I'm going to introduce my Productiv colleague, Tejal Javeri, who is the Director of Enterprise Customer Success. And Tejal's going to lead a short presentation on how Productiv's SaaS intelligence platform can unlock the power of data to drive productivity at work. And then we will bring Victor Hugh, the managing partner at Varisource, to the front of the stage, virtual stage here, to give a short overview of how the Varisource Data Insights platform combines data, machine learning, and intelligent automation to centralize technology contracts, spend, usage, inventory, and performance data to help IT and procurement teams save time and money. And after the presentations are over, I'll bring both Victor and Tejal back virtually, and we'll have a panel discussion because there are some specific topics that I want to make sure that we address. Specifically, why contract data is not enough and why you need up-to-date tracking of spend, usage, and compliance in order to achieve the level of visibility you need for good technology governance. How do you operationalize all this? How do you instrument your platforms to deliver proactive insights and not just passive notifications to help you manage your technology estates? And spend optimizations, delivering the R in ROI. No one is going to argue against right-sizing spending, but is that the only objective here? And finally, we'll wrap things up with an audience Q&A. So please put your questions in the chat and we'll get to them at the end. If we keep to time, we should wrap up in a total of about 45 minutes. And I trust that you will have found that to be time well spent. The subtitle of the webinar is 5 business outcomes IT teams can deliver with increased visibility and automation of their technology portfolios. And anytime I see a number in a headline like that, I think I just clicked on a BuzzFeed listicle. So just in case you thought you'd been clickbaited into this webinar, the big 5 business outcomes we're going to talk about over the next 40 minutes include spend optimizations, which I've mentioned, visibility and compliance and how that drives governance, proactive insights and benchmarking, supplier and employee performance, all of which should lead to better decision making. So with that, let me introduce you to Tejal Javeri, Director of Enterprise Customer Success at Productiv. Tejal?
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Welcome, and thanks, Mark, for the introduction. I will quickly get started with what Productiv is. So to give you an understanding of what Productiv is, it's a SaaS intelligence platform like Mark started off with. What does it mean to be a SaaS intelligence platform? It means that it is a data-driven approach, bringing in our predictive analytics and ML models into play to bring in all the sources of data that we can bring to you to help you achieve the outcomes like visibility and compliance, app portfolio optimizations, forecasting and benchmarking, intelligent automations, and frictionless personalized experience for your employees. Now, how do we get this together is by piping in sources of data from multiple different arrays. 1, your SSO applications. 2, your organizational chart data. So we know which employee is using what license at what time. Finance data. What are you paying to your vendors? User expenses. If there are users expensing any SaaS investments that you are not aware of, we bring forth to you. Contracts, a very critical piece. but a part of all the pieces that we bring together. And if you have a network that we can pull in data for you from CASB, we also populate that information. In addition to that, what we also bring to you is deeper app usage for all your employees. Just not login information that your user is logging into, but which feature functionality are they using? Are they entitled to be using that feature functionality? And if they are doing so, how is it impacting their employee performance? So all this put together, what SaaS Intelligence Platform is doing is up-leveling your game and providing deeper, higher insights with proactive governance, putting your workflows together there, and encouraging operational velocity, which drives employee engagement at the end. So with that in mind, I'd like to go over a few deeper capabilities that Productiv is able to provide through through the platform. Now, I talked about visibility and compliance. What does that mean? Bringing all the data that you have from your SaaS investments in one single view. These may be managed by IT, some may not be managed by IT. And once we get that view together, you are able to detect duplicate applications doing the same things which you may or may not be willing to have access to your employees. With regard to app portfolio optimizations, like I said, we pull in your spend data, the spend that you're making towards your vendors, and also expense data. So how can we help you optimize that spend by looking into the applications, but also the usage of those? In addition to that, with contracts coming in, Productiv also provides you the proactive renewal management workflows, providing you the notifications, at the same time, actionable insights towards those. When it comes to forecasting and benchmarking, very critical. We'll talk about it in the course of the webinar, but Productiv provides benchmarks at multiple layers, at the portfolio level, at the app level, at feature level. So you are able to figure out which features are not being used, which are yet to be used, and also at the pricing benchmark level. All this put together, you're able to intelligently automate your workflows within the IT realm, where you're able to say, how many people need to be onboarded at what time? Are we in the right space of licensing? Do we need to right size? To the point that Mark was making on spend optimizations. All this in the view of making your employee experience and employee engagement the best in breed. And again, we'll talk about what that means and how we bring that together. But these are some of the major capabilities that the Productiv SaaS Intelligence Platform opens it up. With that, let's also see how we are doing and which customers have joined our rocket ship. So Productiv is growing, and thanks to all the customers that you see across the verticals that we have been able to provide value across operationalizing, across data-driven business outcomes. If you are interested in joining this SaaS management movement and onboard our rocket ship, please mention something in the chat or look out at productiv.com. Thank you. And with that, I'll hand it over to Mark back.
Thank you very much, Tejal. So next, let me introduce you to Victor Q. Victor is the managing partner at Varisource, to explain how the Varisource platform helps clients make better use of their own data to drive business outcomes. Victor?
Yeah, thanks, Mark and Tejal. That was amazing. You guys are able to do with SaaS management, visibility, and data. For us, we see the world that it's, IT is over on $4 trillion spent globally, and it's only going to grow over time. And I think one of the things that both of companies realize is that data and visibility has always been very difficult for customers to gather and manage and on a continuous basis. And so all the great things that Productiv does for SaaS management, Varisource is looking to do that across other IT categories. And so what we built is a global B2B technology data marketplace, and excited to show how we do that. So, obviously, this slide is interesting because for us, a lot of, everyone on a daily basis recognize when you look to book hotels, when you look to, buy flights or shopping or Zillow for real estate. So a lot of these companies have saved us a lot of money, a lot of time, because they've aggregated millions of data points through machine learning, through gathering data. That's their core business. That's what they focus on doing. And really, in a simple way, present to consumers, of course, the way for you to shop the best price comparisons to get the best deal possible for whether it's hotels or flights. And so obviously IT services and IT sourcing is more complex. And so, what Varisource is looking to do is build a similar concept of technology to help aggregate millions of data points and about 3,000 plus suppliers into our marketplace and database to bring that visibility and to the customer. And that visibility can turn into leverage, which we'll talk about in the next slide. So we look at the IT lifecycle or data, how data can, applying data insights to sourcing and savings on IT services. We look at it as 4 different phases. So first phase is data gathering. So data for visibility is helping customer where a lot of companies of every size, obviously, track data on spreadsheets or, not at all, or they rely on going to their suppliers to get data such as spend, contracts, inventory, supply performance, right? And of course, if you go ask your supplier how well they're doing, I'm sure most of them are going to tell you they're doing great, but we don't want to do it from a feeling perspective, but we want to do it from a factual data perspective. And those things are very, very difficult to track. And so one thing, the first phase is about, Varisource helping your organization to digitize and centralize all of that data into a single dashboard. So you know what you currently have, where the risks are, what your spend are. And the second phase is, what do we do with that data? Now that you know what you have, what value can we drive from that? And it goes into phase 2 and 3. Phase 2 is using our 50 million data points of supplier pricing, supplier intelligence in the market, across 200 countries and 3,000 different suppliers and 16 different IT categories. We can help you benchmark completely no charge as we work on a share savings model to help you identify where optimization and savings can happen. Now, doing benchmarking doesn't mean you have to switch from your current supplier. It means that we're giving you visibility to see where optimization can happen and to have leverage. And the third phase is vendor options. When you look at deploying a new project, whether that's for cybersecurity, for cloud, for connectivity, for SD-WAN, any of these projects, it takes a long time to find the right suppliers, right? If you go to Google, it's usually only a few suppliers that pay the most ads. So in our marketplace, you'll have access completely for free to 3,000 different suppliers that you'll be able to find multiple quotes for any projects you're looking for that fits your business and size. And the last part is data for compliance. So once we figure out how the sourcing, the savings happen, how do we continuously manage all of that data on a continuous basis in an automation way? And that's what Varisource does for customers. And we'll finish up with our last slide. So so we overall cover about 16 different categories of IT, and obviously each of these categories has a lot of subcategories. So when we talk about voice, security, cloud, connectivity, data centers, mobility, professional services, obviously companies spend a lot of money on all these services to run the business. And for us, this is trying to provide that data intelligence to make sure that you have the best features, the best pricing, the best leverage across any of your suppliers and products. And we often are seeing on average 20 to 35% savings once we work with the customer through our benchmarking data set. And absolutely look forward to the panel discussions and answer everyone's questions.
Thank you, Victor. I've said this to you personally a couple of times, that I feel like our two companies have a lot philosophically in common. We approach the problem the same. We attack slightly different aspects of the problem, but there's a high degree of philosophical alignment between our two companies. So both of you stay right there virtually, and for the panel discussion. And we'll dig into some of these topics in a little bit more detail. But first, I wanted to make a sort of framing statement. And we're all living through this incredible proliferation of data generating endpoint devices, whether they're in our personal or professional lives, consumer or enterprise. And it's so much so that almost every conceivable daily human activity, from exercise to logging into your single sign-on system, it's sort of creating its own sort of clickstream of data. So as I was getting ready to research and prepare for this webinar, I wanted to look up some statistics about just this sort of incredible exponential rise in the creation of data. So in other words, just how big is big data? And it turns out that the World Economic Forum, tracks this very question, basically gathering data about data. And their estimate was that at the beginning of 2020, they estimated that the amount of data in the world was 44 zettabytes. Now, I didn't know what a zettabyte was, but it is apparently 1,000 bytes to the 7th power. In other words, one zettabyte has 21 zeros after it. And to put that number in context, again, the World Economic Forum says that that is 40 times greater than the number of stars in the observable universe. More stars than there are grains of sand, as much data, or 40 times more data than all that. And it's just mind-boggling numbers. And that number only continues to grow and grow at an increasingly rapid pace. Now, prior to Productiv, I was fortunate enough to spend part of my career at Google, where the concept of data-based decision-making was a kind of core management attribute. And there was even a saying, if you don't have any data, all you really have is an opinion. And I used to sort of live by that mantra, but I realized that that's almost a simplistic way to be thinking about the problem, because it's clear that with so much data out there, in the telecom space, in the SaaS space, in professional services, that just having data is not enough. There's a difference between data and insights, and just having a bunch of data is not, necessarily insightful. So it's not surprising then that, the sort of so-called big data professions of machine learning and artificial intelligence and data science, they're among the fastest growing professions and one of the biggest skill gaps in a lot of organizations. And then there's been this whole category of enterprise companies that have grown up around this problem, not just business intelligence data visualization companies, but companies like Splunk or indeed Productiv or Varisource that help enterprises turn all this data into operational intelligence. So with that as kind of a framing convention for the discussion, Victor, I want to start with the first question addressed to you. But Tejal, if you want to add to it, please do. Same thing with you, Victor. If you have something to add to a question of Tejal, please do. So Victor, where are you seeing your customers struggle the most with their data? And why do companies not have the data that they need to make better decisions? Is it that they've got too much data and they don't know what to do with it? Or is it that they don't have the tools, systems, processes, technologies, and skill sets needed to sort of harvest and collect and operationalize that data in the first place?
Yeah, this is such great topic, and I think we could probably talk for hours on this, but this topic alone. But I think it's a combination of everything you just talked about, Mark. I think what we've seen is that company of all shapes and sizes, they may have data which are tracked on spreadsheets, which is a very common thing. So they believe they have data, but obviously when it's on spreadsheets, you're not able to apply analytics and machine learning or all these tools, latest technology to help you analyze that data. So you need also resources, you need people. And then do they have the expertise and time, because everybody's so busy, everybody has so much to do? Do they have the time to go analyze the data? Because oftentimes with these type of technology services, they buy it maybe 3 years ago, and then they just come every day to work and it works, and they don't try to worry too much about it. And they maybe worry about it when they get that notice from their supplier. You have 60 days left to look at a renew. And so I think it's a combination of cost. Even if they buy tools, somebody has to enter the data, somebody has to collect the data. So it's a combination of all those things. And I think one of the best ways that Productiv and Varisource is solving that is through automation, right? Automation means we have to gather data in an automated way. And also as Varisource, we provide resources as part of our process to help the customer gather that data through API, spreadsheets, or LOA to get that data from the supplier. Because one last thing I would say to that is, in the technology world, technology services, suppliers don't make it easy that they put all your contract information, those details in the portals. And you could have 100 different portals. It's just so hard to keep up. And so I think a customer needs not just a tool, not just a resource, not just expertise, not just automation. They need a combination of all those things, and that's why I love what Varisource and Productiv is doing. Is we do all of those things for the customer. Yeah.
Absolutely. Totally agree to that, Victor. Mark, if I may. So
Please.
one thing I'll add to that, 100% agree to what you just said. It's manual right now for most of our customers. There's automation needed. One other thing that I'll add to it is what we have seen as experience is the data is also federated, meaning not one team or one function holds all the data. So getting all that data together is not easy through the manual approaches like spreadsheet. So that automation comes into play and becomes very critical at that point, because when the ITT goes in and wants the data, they have only a subset of data, not the entire gamut and full picture of it. So totally agree. And that's something that I'll quickly add to that.
Great, thank you. Tejal, the next question I'll address to you specifically. Again, Victor, you're welcome to comment. So I said in the preamble that having a contract, whether it's a telecom contract or sort of master services agreement or a SaaS licensing agreement, assuming that you can find the contract, which first of all, but just having the contract alone, having access to the contract alone is often not enough. What can you tell us what sort of trends you've been seeing? Situations where, again, assuming you find the contract, but despite even having the contract, clients still have challenges to sort of make timely, relevant, actionable decisions.
Absolutely.
What are you seeing?
Absolutely. A very valid question, which we run into almost day in and day out. I'm sure Victor also runs into this. The three things that come to mind, the challenges that we have seen customers run into with contract data is, as we all know, each contract is written differently. So the language on the contract is different. The formatting on the contract is different. The terms and conditions are different on every contract piece that we have. So even if you have the contract copy in front of you, not everybody is able to disseminate the information and get the valid information out of it to make sure that they have the relevant data to take the business decisions that they need to. That's one challenge. The other challenge that we've seen is just having the manual contract copy does not help them. Going back to Victor's point, automation. They can set manual notifications, but they have to individually set it for each and every contract that they have. So that's one other challenge, because that kind of hinders them from being proactive with their contract renewals, contract discussions, and getting deeper into the business decisions. The third thing, which is coming up more and more and has become a critical piece of it, is compliance. So these conversations on contracts and renewals have to have, in conjunction with security and compliance team, is the vendor compliant with what is important to my company? And those may or may not be tracked in the piece of contract that you have. So the way that Productiv is addressing this challenge is, one, by standardizing the view of what are the important key fields that you as a customer need to understand the contract. So you don't have to dig into the details and figure out, oh, what is my data point that I need for this renewal or this conversation to have with the vendor. In addition, with every contract ingestion Productiv does, we provide notifications at least 120 days in advance. So you are way ahead of the curve when you're getting into the discussion with the vendor. And third, compliance. We today track up to 7 compliance certifications against each application. So every contract that's uploaded, customers get to know which app is compliant to which certificate. So that we are seeing as a kind of holistic solution to address to what Mark's question was.
Yeah, Mark, if you don't mind to add to that a little bit. I mean, it's great. So, I'll give a couple of examples. So, if you have a contract data of just, when the contract expires, sometimes there's best practices. Let's just talk about in telecom, right, where there's notice periods, where a contract actually start when you install the internet service and not when you sign the contract. And so there's so many nuances that are not even set in the actual contract that requires expertise in that category, or it requires somebody to keep record of those details, not just the actual contract. And so I think for those things, it's just way too difficult for any individuals or people to track, because again, everybody's so busy, obviously managing the business on a day-to-day basis. So it has to be done in an automated way. And I think that's the best part is what Tejo was talking about. There's just so many nuances that it's there. So having contract data is not enough. And also one last thing I would add to that is, even if you know the contract status, how do you know if you're getting the best price? So the sourcing aspect, the comparison, that also is another data set that's not widely available, that you can just go out and search and say, do I have the best price? And so I think that's what Varisource is doing, is we've done all that work, right, of collecting 50 million data points of these categories of pricing to help you very quickly, complementing your IT and procurement team to provide them the data intelligence to make those decisions.
The data strategists talk about structured data versus unstructured data, and what I'm gathering from both of you is that a paper contract is almost a classic example of unstructured data. And both services perform a sort of normalization of that. And then that really allows for automation, for machine learning, for notifications, for data mining and predictive analytics that you just can't get from a piece of paper. Good, great. Well, so I want to move on from the sort of conceptual, maybe theoretical, into the realm of the practical. Because a big part of what we're talking about, not the only part, obviously, is spend optimizations and cost savings. So for the audience listening, Victor, I wonder if you could highlight. You don't have to name names, but if you could highlight some of the sort of client case studies, examples that your clients have achieved through your platform in intelligent vendor selection or right sizing or cost optimizations.
Yeah, so a couple of examples. There's a big migration in the telecom world that customers are going from MPLS to SD-WAN. And SD-WAN is a hardware, is a technology, it's a software plus hardware platform, but then it also requires internet pricing around the world. So there's so many. So for example, a typical process for a customer is they're spending X amount for MPLS. And when they need to look at those migrations or benchmarking for those services, they launch an RFP, and then they gather pricing from some few suppliers that they know of, they heard of, and there's no way to know all the suppliers out there in the market. And so they're missing out on a lot of great pricing and potential savings for comparisons. And but once they get the information, that's a long 2 to 3 months process. And for us, for example, for SD-WAN, because we have thousands of suppliers on internet pricing and SD-WAN pricing on a global basis, through our tool and platform and our data sets, we're able to help the customer, gather quotes by simply understanding what the customer currently has, what they're trying to achieve, and then compare that data and find them, 5 or 6 potential options that fits their need, their size, their industry within days. And that really speeds up the process of then filtering down who are the right suppliers we want to have a conversation with. And do we have even the list of suppliers that are, going to be able to fit, our requirements? And so obviously that's saving time. And because we have a much bigger data set than a typical individual customer would have, the amount of pricing that we're able to bring, right? It's not just the top 2 suppliers, in the market, but it's hundreds of other options. It doesn't mean you have to go with those other options, but it means that you have more data to leverage, right, as a customer. And I think what we realize is that customer today, although they're the customer, they hold the purse per se, but they don't have a lot of leverage because they lack so much data intelligence on the market and suppliers. And so that's why, across cloud mobility, we're very easily doing a free audit for these customer benchmark audit to usually see about 20 to 35% savings without them having even to switch from AWS or Azure or their current mobility service. And so there's just, I think, a lot of possibilities for cost savings and cost optimization in the market, but customers just lack that access to that data. And that's what we're trying to disrupt. So,
Victor, let me just follow up on that. So I've heard you use that 20 to 35% benchmark before, but I actually didn't realize it until you just said it, that it's without switching suppliers. So how
It
is that
depends on the
achieved?
products. Yeah, it depends on the product. So for example, if you look at mobility, there's only 3 suppliers, at least in the US, right? There's AT&T, Verizon, T-Mobile. So there's not, so a lot of times, depending on the services, there is switching required, but a lot of services there is not. But what we help customer with is 2 areas. One is if, for us providing the data to the customer allows them to look at what the true market has to offer. And if they do want to stay with their current supplier, they can take our data set and we will help the customer negotiate with their current supplier to say, hey, this pricing is old, the customer likes to stay with you, but the market has changed. There's a lot of better solutions and feature options out there. If you want to continue to work with this customer, then we have proof. So let's work together to reduce that cost with your current supplier. Or 2, is providing those multiple options on a much bigger, broader set of pricing and data to the customer to find savings for mobility, where we can, through our tools and platform, we can show the customer, hey, you have overages here, you have licenses, you have cell phones that has been used in over a year. Why are you still paying for that license? Very similar to Productiv, what you do for SaaS, but we're doing it across more IT categories. Yeah.
Great, and let me ask you to join in, Tejal. I wonder if you have any sort of examples of like surprising insights or sort of unexpected things that we discovered on behalf of clients once we connect and start getting greater visibility.
Absolutely, all the time is the answer to that. But to add to, I'll quickly just start off with adding to what Victor was saying, and then come to your question, Mark, about the surprises.
Sure.
So one thing I'll call out is, like Victor already has mentioned, there are similarities between what Victor and the workflow at Varisource does versus what Productiv does. The only difference I'll call out is with spend optimization and cost savings in mind as well. The end goal, again, for Victor is supplier experience, for Productiv is employee experience. So how can we make the operations efficient, but at the same time, make sure that the employee experience is top-notch. So from that perspective, the categories that we provide within Productiv and the overlap within categories is the starting point for customers to look at where they can optimize. If there is an overlap, why are we spending? Like Victor said, why is the phone usage over even when they're not using it? Similarly, if they're using multiple project management apps, is there an overlap? Can we look at that and help customers with optimization? Now, there are multiple other ways. Benchmarks is one other way. But coming to your question on surprises, Mark, one thing that stands out is shadow IT. We call it shadow IT, but it's more discovered apps where customers, IT teams may or may not be aware of what is being used other than their scope of IT. So when we hook up expenses and payments and other SSO social login, we see that there are a bunch of aha moments saying, aha, I didn't know that so-and-so user is using or expensing this application. And we've run into specific examples with customers where the same application has been expensed and being paid for, meaning they have an enterprise license and there's a user who is not aware of the enterprise license being in contract, and they were separately expensing. So there has been spend optimization from that perspective as well, where the IT team was able to discover those apps, make sure they compare that this user needs to be moved on to the enterprise package and get that payment back from the vendor. So that's one of the examples. And there are a bunch others, but I'll stop there in the interest of time.
Yeah, I actually want to pick up on the points of differentiation as well before I get to my next question. So two things that are slightly different about our two approaches, our two platforms are, one, our users, the Productiv platform is giving sort of decision support and analysis to procurement teams and finance teams and IT leaders for a variety of things, not just spend optimization, but IT automation, IT operations, and employee experience. But with respect to sort of license right sizing, we're a decision support tool. We're not a service. Productiv is not entering into a negotiation on behalf of its clients. It sounds, Victor, like you're take a stronger posture in that respect. And then the other thing that I noticed was a little bit different I wanted to call out is, it sounds like a lot of the leverage that Varisource can bring to its customers comes from just having a better informed negotiating posture. But with Productiv, we really don't really talk that much about vendor switching or anything like that. We're able to achieve optimizations within the product itself by moving around users through different license tiers, or by elastic license management, swapping users in and out. So not really a question there. Just wanted to call out slight differences between the way that that the two companies operate. So Tejal, you mentioned benchmarks in part of your answer. Victor actually talked about benchmarking as well in his preamble. I had originally thought of just directing this question to you, Tejal, but I'll do the same as I've done in all of these. I'll ask you, and then Victor can comment on it. Yeah. So I know that Productiv allows its customers to opt into anonymized benchmarks on both cost and adoption, right? Technology adoption as well. So, so what's the role of benchmarking in this broader sort of framework of database decision making?
Absolutely. And we've talked about benchmarking from different aspects.
Yeah.
How it comes into play in Productiv is very simple. If you have to manage, we are in the business of SaaS management and SaaS operations. If you have to manage, you have to measure, and to measure, you need to have a metric which you can go against, right? So from the benchmarking perspective, Productiv provides benchmarks at different levels. So one, at the portfolio level, meaning how many apps should you be having based on the size of the customer you are, and what are we seeing across the customer base? That's one level of benchmarking. That at a very high level to business stakeholders tells them, oh, we are already over. Now we should think about where we are over and what workflows to and motions to put in play. The other benchmark that we provide is at the app usage level, meaning if you are using Zoom, how are you benchmarking against the other customers who are using Zoom? Are you 80% there, 85% there? We show a benchmark, and if you're over or above, so you can work towards the benchmark. And in addition to that, we also provide adoption goals. So if there is a motion in play around, say, benchmarking on Zoom, if you're lower on benchmarking, how can you put in place campaigns and trainings and make sure that you double click into the features and functionality that users are using, so you can bump up and come towards benchmarking, which will be the best ROI on that product. And the third level of benchmarking on the usage side is a feature level. So if, like we are on a Zoom right now, are we recording? Are we screen sharing? Are we using the audio? What is the benchmark against each of those features that we tracked across the board? So accordingly, when you are putting adoption plans in place, trainings in place, you can focus on those. So that's on the usage benchmarking, but at the same time, we provide pricing benchmarks, which gives customers an understanding if they are paying per license, per SKU, if they are paying higher or lower. So that gives them an understanding that if there is a room for negotiation, if not, if they're lower, they're doing a great job on the procurement side, on the negotiation side. And all that comes into play from, again, the spend optimization side, but operational efficiency, what Mark was saying, if you're not on the right set of benchmarking, what workflows can be initiated for you? Yeah, so that's where I'll close out, Mark, unless there's a follow-up there.
Actually, I did have a follow-up, because I noticed at least half of your answer was about technology adoption, not necessarily cost optimization. And so I guess the premise is SaaS applications drive productivity. They're good. They make businesses and teams and users more effective. And so the idea here is not let's get rid of them or use less of them.
Yeah.
Is it that, in fact, in certain cases, maybe customers should be using more of them? Presumably, there's benefits that accrue to the use of it. So in my preamble, I said no one's going to argue against cost optimization, but it's not really the only benchmark, right? It's not the only objective that we're in pursuit of here.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the most ROI that we have seen customers realize is by pushing on adoption, less on cutting on cost.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I actually didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Victor, I did want to give you the opportunity to add anything that you would like about benchmarking. As I said, I saw that you talked about it in your presentation, or you can wave me off to the next question if you'd like.
Yeah, no, just a few seconds on this. On benchmarking, there's different, word for it. I think ROI is also, there's so many different ways you can kind of mention that, but it's how do we turn, that value for the customer? And I think for us, it's not just about analyzing what you currently have compared to data, in the market and identify optimization and savings, but it's also because through our marketplace, we do what we call more of a group purchasing model, because there's access to our marketplace. You have thousands of companies that are buying with these suppliers, that there's bigger buying power for any compared to any individual customer. So even if you're buying AT&T or Comcast or any specific provider that you would have direct sourcing through our platform, you're accessing a partner community with these suppliers that you're getting exclusive discounts and support and all these things. That are so much more benefit, more than just cost savings and benchmarking. And again, you guys are in the software space, so which is great. There's a lot of automation and API and connectors. When you're talking about telecom and mobility and cloud and a lot of these professional service, managed services, hardware, there's less of those APIs, and sometimes I feel like suppliers do that on purpose. But I think that's where our expertise and our Varisource team help the customer through all of that. So it's not just a tool, but it's an entire kind of white glove treatment and concierge service for the customer.
Well, actually, there are customers that do it on purpose, or vendors that do it on purpose. I see in my realm, running technology partnerships here, that there definitely are suppliers who embrace open as a business and operating philosophy, and there are others for whom a classic walled garden is their business strategy. So it's not necessarily about they're trying to hide the cookie, but they're definitely two different sort of operating philosophies about openness toward data. All right, we're right on time. We've got about 4 minutes left. I've got one last question. We might have time for one question that came in over chat. So in sort of a summary question, first to you, Victor, then Tejal, why now? Why do this now? What are the sort of immediate benefits of harnessing data to make better decisions, and what are some of the sort of more enduring long-term benefits?
Yeah, why now? I mean, obviously, cloud adoption, you can call that, in security, right? You can call that in telecom. Everything is going to cloud, the entire kind of technology services. And it's only going to grow because things are improving. There's better, cheaper, faster way of doing things, of better tools to support your customers, support your partners. And in order to kind of support that, it's kind of like if you spend top 3 spend in your organization on IT services, and I think visibility is super important, not just on cost savings and oftentimes what we do is cost reallocation, which means we help customers save maybe on mobility, but we reallocate those savings towards a cybersecurity project they didn't really have the budget for yet, but they know that they desperately need and want to implement. And so there's a lot of these kind of things that I think because the market is growing so fast, customers needs to now have a data partner. And that's what Varisource wants to be, is your data partner to complement what your team is doing. It's not to change any of your processes, but is to provide you the data to enhance those processes. And yeah, absolutely. Like I said, it's a growing thing. And there's going to be, especially cybersecurity space, there's a lot of space that are very sensitive, and the customer lack the data to, kind of work on those things. And that's where, I think it's, you got to start now. It's not a one-day process. You got to start now. So we help you build that process to support you, years down the road. So.
Yep,
Great.
Absolutely agree.
No, I was going to say we're in lightning round here. I'm looking at the shot clock. We've got 2 minutes left. I'm going to try to get 2 questions in, 30 seconds to each of you. One question to the point mentioned about paper contracts being unstructured data. We have over 250 SaaS vendors and numerous other tech partnerships. What's the lift going to be for a company to work with a platform like either Varisource or Productiv to actually get their arms around this? What's the
so yeah, I'll go
what's the time to value?
Yeah, so for us is we work with customers all the way from 150 employees all the way up to 150,000 employees at the Fortune 500s. And so for us, it's obviously every company has an IT spend, has IT challenges, and comes in different forms. And our platform and data is flexible to help customer of every size. So feel free to reach out to us.
Yep. From Productiv side, upload of contracts is pretty seamless. We have multiple ways of uploading contracts, and we have a bunch of customers who have way more than 250 SaaS vendors and contracts. So we have API connections, we have other upload processes where time to value is very, very seamless. So I'd say as soon as we have the data, you have the data in front of you.
Great. 1 minute left. Last question. And in fact, you hinted at this, Victor. Good way to close out here. Where do I go to learn more about each of your platforms?
Yeah, so, obviously people can go to varisource.com, varisource.com. They can
Printed
go
on
to
your shirt there.
Exactly. You have to zoom in here. But yeah, or through social media as well, or they can email me at victor.hou@varisource.com. And super excited about the partnership with Productiv and really provide some disruption in providing data and visibility to customers. So.
And Tejal, I suppose people can go to
Yes.
productiv.com.
Absolutely, yes. And let's join the SaaS intelligence movement together. Let's do it.
Great, thank you. Victor, Tejal, thank you so much for doing this. It was enlightening. It was fun. I hope you got something useful out of it. We're going to make this available in social media and on our various communication platforms in a replay mode and in sort of bite-sized chunks. So if you want to replay, watch for our Twitter, our LinkedIn feed, or I know Victor's very prolific on social media as well. Look for that. So with that, right at time, draw it to close. This was fun. Thank you so much, Victor. And thank you everyone else for participating.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.